readings on vegetable biostimulants, NPK deficiencies, and then potentially a pollinator habitat presentation. So tonight I'm going to be presenting, and we have our intern Amelia Olds joining us as well. And we're going to be talking about using a demonstration farm for IPM education. So we'll just start off and kind of introduce ourselves. A lot of you might be familiar with me, but I'll just introduce myself again. My name is Nick Valesky. I am a vegetable IPM associate with Utah State University Extension. I'm also a graduate student in the plant science program. A lot of my experience is involved with commercial vegetable production, plant pathology, entomology, pesticide application, and of course, general integrated pest management. So next we have Amelia. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello. Hopefully you can all hear me, but I'm Amelia Olds. I've been interning / working at the IPM program this summer. I'm an undergraduate student at Utah State, but I'm finally a senior, so hopefully we'll get there at the end. I know the question you're wondering is how many kohlrabi can I hold? And that's the answer, that I couldn't hold any more of them. But I have a little bit of experience in home gardening. I'm definitely getting more experience in that. But I'm kind of have an animal science background. I do a little bit with ecology, and I am majoring in community agricultural education.
Awesome. Thank you, Amelia. So let's just talk about kind of our overview, what this idea is about a demonstration farm that we got going. So kind of the cool thing that might seem obvious, but it's actually pretty science-based, is that research has shown that farmers and other extension clientele prefer hands-on learning as opposed to passive learning. So you're probably thinking, duh, like everyone learns better hands-on. So that's something we wanted to do with this demonstration farm, having kind of an on-site area for people to learn as opposed to just reading the website or even just watching a Zoom webinar like this. So last year in the summer of 2022, we actually had a small little version of this. We had a trial demonstration vegetable farm at this site, mainly just to kind of play with the idea and to gauge an interest in having an outdoor classroom. And we actually did host a field day where 48 participants showed up, and we sent out an evaluation survey. And some of the findings were that 73% of participants increased their knowledge in general, knowledge of general IPM tactics. 65% increased their knowledge in pest identification. And then, but almost 100% thought the farm was successful, was a successful learning site, and they would totally attend additional farm events in the future. So this was really promising data that we took and ran with. Some other things that you guys should know. So this is kind of an interesting statistic that I always like to share, is that Utah has lost close to 17,000 acres of farmland between 2012 and 2017. So that's a bit outdated. So that number has probably definitely grown. But note that a lot of that land has been subdivided. So the total farm operations has actually increased, where about 34% of those farms are between 1 and 9 acres. And 44% of these farmers have about less than 5 years of experience. So maybe that might be a category that you fall under. You're new to farming and you're excited to learn more. And kind of another key data point that we source is from pest management knowledge. So our team we recognize the need of pest management and from these new small farmers. And we see that in one source is the Utah Gardening Experts Facebook page, which has probably over 20,000 members at this point. It grows every year. But essentially they post questions about looking for new non-chemical pest management options and just wanting hands-on learning options. So we saw that and ran with it. And then in 2020, my supervisor and I put together a survey of Utah citizens, and we had about 3,250 respondents. And we kind of found that 74% highly valued information from USU Extension specialists. And most respondents wanted to learn more about new topics like general IPM techniques, insect identification management, and natural enemy identification and promotion. So with that, we applied for funding through an internal grants program at USU Extension. So we were able to pitch this idea of a demonstration farm that we could use to teach small farmers and urban gardeners about different pest management practices. So the three objectives of this was to, one, establish a small-scale vegetable farm demonstrating biological, mechanical, cultural, and organic chemical pest control methods. Two, educate stakeholders on integrated pest management practices using this vegetable farm. And then three, provide experiential learning for undergraduate students with interest in agricultural education, horticulture, entomology, and plant pathology. So that's where Amelia falls in. So her position's actually funded through this grant, along with our USU Extension Integrated Pest Management Program. So tonight with this presentation, what we want to do is review the data of all the different IPM practices we're trialing at the farm and kind of show you what's going on and what's happening. And then we're going to look at factors for evaluating the worth and environmental friendliness and just kind of the effectiveness of these practices as we go through each one. So I'll let Amelia share a bit about our farm overview.
Okay, so the IPM demonstration farm, it's located pretty close to campus. It's about 5 minutes north, but it's at the Utah Agricultural Experiment Station and the Greenville Research Farm. It is about 10,500 square feet, which is a little bit bigger than most backyard gardens in my experience. 2,000 square feet is for the onion variety trial. About 1,095 square feet is for pollinator habitat, and then 7,405 square feet is just for vegetable production. The hardiness zone, the USDA plant hardiness zone is about 6A, and it's about 4,500 feet elevation, a little bit more than that. The soil is Millville silt. Oh my goodness, I can't even talk today. Silt loam with 2% organic matter, and we irrigate about twice a week at 1.5 inches within 1 to 2 inches with in-ground drip tape. You want to go to the next
here's
slide.
kind of a overview, bird's eye view, I should say, drone footage of the farm. So you can see here we got our pollinator garden. This area of the farm is where the onion variety trial, and this is actually ran by the USU Plant Pathology Lab with Dr. Claudia Nischwitz. And then pretty much everything else you see is different vegetable production. So these are the different trials that we have going on.
We have, if you're wondering what we're growing there, the answer is probably yes. We have a ton of crops. The one I'm most excited for is the tomatoes. We have over 60 tomato plants. We have other solanaceae crops like peppers and tomatillos, and we have brassicas and squash and watermelons and all sorts of stuff. So we're going to have a lot of crops this fall when it comes to harvest time.
Yeah, and I think part of the fun of having all these crops is just seeing how well they grow and the different pest pressure that we have here in Utah, and seeing, oh, what pests are going to eat different types of vegetables, especially on a farm. So that's kind of what we want to showcase.
Because it is a pretty big plot of land, we have a bunch of weed control tactics. The big one is we use a bunch of different kind of mulches and weed barriers. If you look at the top left, you can see Nick helping put down that plastic mulch that tractor helped put down our drip line as well, which was super convenient. But we have plastic mulch, we have the white, the black, and if you look down on the left, we have the black and the silver mulch, which we use in some of our experiments. And we actually used a fancy stick. I don't know what the stick was called. I just called it the fire stick, but to poke holes in the mulch, so made it really easy for planting. We also have organic mulches, which is going to be the straw, and we have that in between all of the vegetable beds. And then we have some bark in the pollinator habitat.
Yeah, so these are all different types of weed control tactics, and we actually have 2 videos we filmed at the farm going in depth on these. So we have one on using straw mulch for weed control, and we have another video on using the plastic mulch for farms. So if you're interested in those methods, you can check those out on our USU Extension YouTube channel.
We have a whole party of different kinds of traps. We use the classic sticky traps, and these help us monitor for pest populations. We have the yellow and then the blue sticky traps, which are more attractive to thrips. We have pheromone traps, which actually use lures that are specific to each type of pest and will actually attract the pests to the trap. And we use a sticky trap with most of those so that we can see how many of those pests are in the garden. And like I said, those are species specific. So if you look down at all those little packages, we have a ton of different kinds. And then the earwigs on the far right, that's an earwig trap. They have a little bit of a more gourmet taste for traps. So if you add some cooking oil and soy sauce, they think that's like Food Channel worthy, and you'll catch a lot of earwigs that way.
Awesome. Yeah. So the pheromone traps were something new that we did this year at the farm. And basically, I just ordered a ton of different vegetable pests, whether they're known to be present here in Utah or not. And what we found is some of them are very present. So we catch a lot of them on our traps, but others we just haven't seen at all, like a pepper weevil and onion flies, just kind of more specific ones that may not be as prevalent in our area. So this is a really good surveying and monitoring tool for farmers to use.
So I mentioned that silver plastic mulch and how we're using that in experiments. One of those experiments is does silver plastic mulch reduce the presence of thrips and the spread of tomato spotted wilt virus, which can only be spread by thrips in peppers. So we have 4 garden beds. We have 2 of those rows have black mulch and 2 of those rows have silver mulch. And what we do is we have a blue sticky trap, because that's more attractive to thrips in each of the rows. Like if you look at that picture that has Nick's bottom half of his body in it, you can see how we've kind of set it up. And then we collect those sticky traps, and based on each of those squares, we'll give it a grade to say how many pests are, or no, actually, this one we actually count the number of thrips on there, which there's a picture of a thrip down there, and then a picture of the TSWV on peppers. So we're physically counting how many thrips we see.
Yeah, so this is kind of a cool study that we've actually built on. So USU has done a lot of work in the past where they use silver mulch. Historically, they've done it with tomatoes, which is obviously one of the main crops affected by tomato spotted wilt virus, and they have shown it to be very effective. And we could kind of tell how it worked too, because when we were laying this silver mulch down, it was super bright and shiny. It hurt our eyes laying it down. So you can imagine what it does to a tiny little thrips. So this year we just kind of switched it up and trialed it with peppers. So we'll continue to monitor these blue sticky traps and do thrips counts, but we're also going to begin looking for symptoms of the tomato spotted wilt virus, which we know is present in the area. So we'll look for distorted growth of the pepper fruits and then different necrotic lesions developing on the pepper leaves itself. So this trial we're just focused on this one specific disease, but silver mulch can also be used for a lot of other crops as well. We actually use it on some brassica crops on the other side of the farm, mainly to exclude cabbage aphids. One of my colleagues, Dr. Claudia Nischwitz, is using silver plastic mulch for dahlia cut flowers to also prevent thrips, which can spread the dahlia mosaic virus. So this is kind of a cool study. So here's kind of what we're finding so far, exactly what you expect. So this is just the total number of thrips percentage that we've found so far this year. And essentially what we see, it's pretty simple. The silver mulch is working. We're seeing a lot less thrips on both sides of our sticky traps with the silver mulch as compared to the black mulch. So this is just kind of a pretty simple experiment, nothing too deep, but it's just cool to see the difference between the colored mulches and how they can be used on a farm site.
Another experiment that we're doing is on row covers, and we're trying to see if they're effective at excluding pests from various brassica crops. If you look at, oh, sorry, Nick. Yeah, thank you. If row covers are kind of like little tents, and they keep pests from that want to eat the crops or lay eggs on them from physically exclude them from the plant space. So you can see that we've done it with 6 different brassica crops. We have Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kohlrabi, kale, and cauliflower. And so we have half of them are covered with a row cover and the other half are uncovered. We have a yellow sticky trap in both of them, and then we collect, and depending on how many pests are on there, we grade them accordingly and take an average. You can see on the top left, there's little grasshoppers that are not making it to our crops to eat them. So that's kind of the idea of a row cover.
Yeah, so row covers are pretty cool and pretty easy to use. So there's different types of materials. We use insect netting just because we didn't start ours till later in the season. But you can also get different spun-bound materials and thicker fabrics as well. A lot of growers might use row covers as for pest control, but also for frost protection early in the season. But for our purposes, the insect netting work great. So you can kind of see in the trial where we had half of them covered and then half of them exposed. And like Amelia said, we had yellow sticky traps both on the outside and inside, and we would do various pest counts. So what we found was for most of the crops, and there's a few variables too where, oh, we had a windy day and the row cover might have fell off, or there were some pests already present underneath, or they got in through a hole. But in general, we can kind of show that row covers are effective. Our uncovered plots had a lot higher pest counts for the most part compared to the covered pests. And we have a lot of row cover content available too. We have a fact sheet and a few videos and webinars if you guys are interested in learning more about pest exclusion with row covers.
Another trial or experiment that we did is about companion planting. And this is going to be with tomatoes and various herbs. I think of this as the pizza experiment. But we have tomatoes planted with basil, chive, and parsley, and then we have tomatoes that are just by themselves. And we're trying to see if that being planted with the herbs reduces the number of pests or helps the tomatoes be more effective at growing fruits or anything like that. So down here at the bottom, you can see that we have the little baby tomato plants next to our little baby herbs. And we have 3 rows of those tomatoes that are planted with herbs. Then we have a buffer. And then we have 3 rows of just tomatoes planted by themselves. And if you look to the right side, this is kind of what we're looking at. So the top sticky trap, it has a lot fewer pests on there, or just bugs in general. So that's going to have a lot lower rating when we grade it. But if you look down at the bottom, that one has a massive amount of pests on there. Tons of flea beetles, tons of various other dudes. So that's going to have a lot higher in our grading system.
Yeah, I think companion planting is really interesting. So I think as home gardeners, you might see different information on Facebook, online, saying like, oh, plant this with your tomato plants to prevent bugs. And really, the truth is companion planting is not an exact science. Like, it's pretty difficult to study. So this was a really fun one to do, just to kind of show. I think for anyone or any farmer or home gardener, if it's something you want to try, definitely put it to the scientific method test. So like we did here, we have a variable group where we have the different companion plantings, but we're also going to compare it to a control group without. And so yeah, like Amelia said, we planted these in between each tomato plant. So this was really early in the season, so the plants were small. But if you go out there right now, they're all big and bushy, so they're kind of all grown together. But we're not really seeing too much significance with the companion planting. So here we're comparing our pest count averages to the two different dates. So the red bar represents our variable group and the control represents our, the blue represents our control group. So in June, we were seeing less pests on our control group and more on the variable. But as the season went on, the plants got bigger. We were seeing pretty much the same. So there's just really not a significant difference between the two. But of course, this was just a really simple trial. And if we were to continue this, we would want to test it over multiple seasons. We would probably want to test it in a larger area too. And ours were pretty close together on the site. I think it would be interesting to test them maybe on two different sites altogether. So there's a lot of different routes someone could do if they were really interested in companion planting. But I guess at the end of it, we'll have a lot of herbs to harvest with our tomatoes that we can cook together. So that'll be fun.
One of the last things that we're going to talk about is the UDAF Utah Pollinator Habitat Program. And that actually is through the Utah Department of Agriculture and Food. And we applied and we got a bunch of different of native Utah plants, specifically the Utah Upland Habitat Kit. And they're all Utah native plants. We're trying to enhance or provide native plants for pollinators and other beneficial pests. And this is kind of on the left here, it's kind of an idea of what we've been seeing. We've got some really beautiful flowers. I can't remember what they're all called though. They're all something weird and fancy. But we also have some really cool beneficial pests that we're, or not beneficial pests, beneficial insects that we're seeing. In the top middle, that's a transverse ladybug, and they're native to Utah, which is pretty fancy. We also have seen praying mantises and a ton of different bees. And different parasitic wasps as well. But we've got, it's over 1,000 feet. So we have a ton of 1,000 square feet. So we've got quite a few plants in there and we've seen quite a few beneficials as well.
Yeah, so this has been really cool to have. And if this is something you guys are interested in having in your own home garden, your farm, or even like your business landscaping, we were part of the inaugural year last year in 2022. It was so successful, they did it again in 2023. The applications are now closed. But if you guys want pollinator plants for free, you can apply next year, 2024. They are going to continue this program. So essentially you apply, talk about your space, and then they will give you starts of these different native species that you can plant on your site. So yeah, so if you guys are definitely interested in seeing this farm, we are going to have a field day on August 3rd. here in Logan. So if you live in the area or if you want to make the drive, there's more information when you register. So I can put